What's going on, everyone? So, Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat may be headed for their last season together. Now, Jimmy Butler could opt in next season and ride out for another year, but there's a lot of talk and word that he is looking for a new contract and will test free agency next season. No, he's getting up there in age, right? He's not, 25 anymore. And so, if he can get more long-term money, I would imagine he's going to go that route. If a team's willing, yeah, he can make 52 million, but if a team's willing to give him, 3 years, 90 million, then he might as well do that as opposed to just opting in for the 1 year. And then now he's only getting, a 2 year, 15 million a year contract, right? So I think he's going to do what's best for the financial sake. Could that still be with Miami? Of course, right? And I don't think, like, a lot of people look at, the incident between Jimmy Butler and Pat Riley. Where Jimmy Butler says something along the lines of like, if I was healthy, we would have ran through all these guys. And, Pat Riley responds with, people that don't play shouldn't talk type thing. And a lot of people, I think, kind of blew that out of proportion and blew that as like, oh, Jimmy Butler's being slighted and blah, blah. Jimmy Butler's just different. Right? Like, I can see Jimmy Butler loving that. Like, being like, oh, all right, watch, I'll show you. Right? Like, that's like Jimmy's known as this, like, a-hole, right? And just loves that pushback and stuff. So, I think that's why he works so well in Miami. I think that's why him and Pat Riley make so much sense. Right? They do have that similar, bullheaded personalities. Right? So, I think it makes a lot of sense for him to stick around with Miami. It's like, where else is he going to go? Like, what teams are lining up to give this guy like a max 4-year deal till he's 40, or 38, right? Like, I don't necessarily see that. He's already had injury issues the last few seasons. And on top of that, there is a real question about how serious he takes the regular season. Now, look, playoff Jimmy is an absolute monster. And Jimmy Butler tries to pretend like playoff Jimmy isn't a real thing. It absolutely is a real thing, right? We see it, the numbers, eye test, all of it, right? So, like, the problem is you still need to make the playoffs. And Jimmy is fine being a play-in team every year, and it's just such an uphill battle to climb. Like, yes, they made the NBA Finals as a play-in team, but still, it's like, it'd be nice to be a top 4 seed, 5 seed, something like that, to where you don't have to play an extra game or two. Right? You might actually win a championship, right? And like, Miami every year or every other year is in the conference finals or the NBA finals. So, there's no doubt that Miami's going to be a powerhouse, but it also feels like, does Miami have to make a move? Does Miami have to do something? There's some talk, some murmurs about, potentially Brandon Ingram in Miami could make some sense, that Miami could put a deal together to go get a guy like a Brandon Ingram. The Pelicans really want to move off of Ingram, and they're expected to make a heavier push come before training camp, right? They want to get some deals done. They also could use a center, right? So there's a lot of things about the Pelicans that they got to kind of figure out, and it would make sense to, like, hey, let's hit up the Miami Heat, right? Let's see what we can get for a guy like Brandon Ingram. Miami could look at it as like, well, hey, we get that guy to pair with Bam and Jimmy and show that, like, hey, we're serious. And then, you look at the Heat roster, they have a couple centers that they could even throw in. They could throw in like a Thomas Bryant, if they wanted to go that route. I don't think that would be the end of the world, especially with Bam. And then they also ended up drafting Khalil Ware, right? So, do you get to see him at some point and see what he can potentially do? That's always a possibility. You have some options in that regard, but also what is the return, right? What do you have to give up is the question, because you don't want to sell the farm and then end up being in a position where it's like, Jimmy, Brandon Ingram, and Bam are not working, and Jimmy Butler might leave, and Brandon Ingram might leave, and it's just like, it would be a gamble, right? It'd be a real risk if you're the Heat. And is that risk worth the reward? Right? What is Brandon Ingram's fit alongside, a Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo? Now, I think he gives them kind of what you need. And on top of that, like the beauty of Jimmy Butler and Bam is they don't really care so much about their stats, right? Like they're two stars that are willing to do the dirty work. And there are very few of those in the league, right? Like Jimmy Butler could care less whether he scores 30 or he scores 3, right? As long as he wins. Like he's willing to play defense and rebound and die for loose balls, sacrifice a button, do all the hard stuff. Same thing with Bam Adebayo, right? Like Bam doesn't care. Like, he can go get 20 or he can get 2. He just, as long as they are winning, as long as he's playing whatever role that they need him to play. Right? And you have 2 stars that are willing to do the dirty work where, you could kind of just let Brandon Ingram be Brandon Ingram. Now, obviously, there's the injury concerns, and Brandon Ingram wants a max contract, right? So it's just like, again, you can't sell the farm for Brandon Ingram, in my opinion, right? You can't be trading everyone and anyone and everyone, to go and get Brandon Ingram. But I do think, you can argue Brandon Ingram could potentially be like a salary dump for you too, right? If you're Miami and kind of hit the reset button, right? Like, you go trade for Brandon Ingram, you unload as much salary as you possibly can, and then, next season, even if Jimmy walks, you basically clear up like 2 max spots, or, you basically have clean books at that point, right? Obviously, you'd sell Bam Adebayo and, whatever young guys, but obviously, there's also the rumors of Jimmy Butler potentially going to the Warriors. I don't really see that, if I'm being honest. No one would want to see Steph and Jimmy in the playoffs, I'll tell you that. Like even in the Western Conference. I mean, and look, Steph in 2022 won with Andrew Wiggins as second best player, right? I mean, yeah, Clay was better, and he had other pieces, but still, like, that was an impressive run, and a run that many people didn't think was going to happen. So, can Jimmy Butler and Steph be enough to win you a championship? You never know. But again, I think it's still a lot of the same questions, right? And are the Warriors willing to trade all their young guys, right? They're kind of in this conflict with Kuminga, and it's just like, okay, like, it's just, do you pay him? Do you trade him? Right? If you're the Heat, do you just kind of look to, the Warriors want Jimmy? It's like, do you just trade him to the Warriors and get Kuminga, Moody, and as much of their young talent as possible and kind of hit the reset button for a year? Right? Like, again, I mean, are the Heat going to be anything more than a play-in team again? Now, I'm sure there's some Heat fans that are like, of course, but no, in all seriousness, will they be more than a play-in team again? I mean, they're that every year. Every year. And every year I hear like, no, they're going to be, a top 3 seed and this, that, and the other. And like, look, obviously they don't care about seeding. Again, they were in the finals as a play-in team. And they lost the first play-in game. Right? So, obviously they don't care about that. But still, like, again, it would be nice to not have to, not have to stress and play extra games and, work twice as hard, right? Like, but if he goes to the Warriors, does he do the same thing? And in the Western Conference, you can't mess around, man. I mean, you got teams winning 47 games, and they're the 9th seed, like 10th seed. Like, where you look at the East, and it's like you win 47 games, you're the 4 seed, like 3 seed at worst, right? Like, it's so different and so tight that, you can't mess around in the Western Conference the way you can in the East if you're Jimmy and the Heat. Like, Jimmy's look at it as like, hey, I just want to get to the playoffs healthy, which, again, I get. But, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Because do Miami just take the risk and let him, like, okay, go, if you think you're going to walk, go ahead, walk. You think another team's going to give you a max? Go ahead. Because also there's not, like, a bunch of playoff teams that have all this cap space, right? So if he ends up walking, he's probably going to a team that is either bad or they're going to have to work out a sign and trade, which Miami didn't get pieces regardless. So Miami might be looking at this as like, it's a win-win for us regardless. And if Jimmy goes and tries to get a contract elsewhere and he can't get a max, then why would we give him a max? It's like, hey, the most you've been offered is $25 million. Like, that's all we're going to give you, or maybe we'll give you $30 million, right? Like, so, I mean, Miami could look at it as like, we may even potentially get Jimmy on a discount, right? Does Jimmy really want to leave, though, too? Or is this just kind of leverage? Is this just kind of a leverage play? It is. It's a interesting dilemma. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel with your thoughts? Do you think that the Heat have to make a move? Like, yeah, the Heat got to do something, right? Because if they don't, they're going to be in some real trouble and potentially lose Jimmy Butler and all that stuff. Do you think, like, who cares? Let Jimmy go. If Jimmy wants to go, let him go type thing. Again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.